Jim Robson, the Deputy Director of the Kelvin Smith Library and the Interim University Librarian at Case Western Reserve University. This session is part of the Spring KSL Advisory Board meeting, but we also opened it up to the general public, and we're glad to see some visitors, Kelvin Smith Library staff here, as well as University Circle librarians and others, so we're glad that you're here. This is a very special presentation because we have two leaders in the library profession today. Carla Stoffle is the Dean of University Libraries and Center for Creative Photography at the University of Arizona in Tucson. She has been the Dean of Libraries at Arizona since 1991 and has played leadership roles on a state, regional, and national scale. Among other things, she was the president of the Association of College and Research Libraries and the past chair of the Center for Research Libraries and the Greater Western Library Alliance. She also was the treasurer of the American Library Association, and she is, I think, going to talk some about financial issues here today, so she will be well qualified. She is a published author. She has published 3 books and more than 50 major articles in library journals and books about libraries. Cheryl Cuillier is the special assistant to the dean at the University of Arizona Libraries. She has a background not just in librarianship, but also as an editor in newspapers and in healthcare publications. She has been appointed to the ALA APA Publishing Committee for 2010 to 2012 in the American Library Association. Their topic today is called From Surviving to Thriving, and one of the focuses that we wanted to have for this meeting of the Library Advisory Board is the bad economic times that we live in and how that affects libraries and what we need to do to begin to think of things in different kinds of ways for providing services and collections to students, faculty, and staff of the university. And we thought that these two individuals would be uniquely qualified to speak on these issues. So I want to welcome Carla Stoffle and Cheryl Cuillier, and please welcome them.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be wowed this morning. That was quite a presentation and quite a development, and I think other libraries will be calling you soon to find out how they can do similar things. The presentation that we're going to do today is based upon one that we gave in Oklahoma at the University of Oklahoma Libraries Conference that they hold each March. And the theme of the conference was climbing out of the box, repackaging the libraries for survival. We decided, of course, as after you accept, you can talk about almost anything you want to, that survival wasn't enough, and that what we really needed to do was to package our libraries to thrive. Thrive not only for ourselves, but thrive because our campuses need for us to make the appropriate changes so that we can enable the campus to reach its goals in a better way. So we decided to talk about how do you thrive, not how do you survive. And our premise is that in order to thrive, that libraries who have been pretty well managed in the past must utilize even more sound business practices, align themselves more closely with campus learning and research goals, nimbly apply new technologies to improve service and reduce costs, and implement benchmarks and best practices while providing value-added library services, and all of that in the context of staying true to the principles of librarianship, our special role on campus. So we view this as a challenge for the librarians and staff of today to create the libraries of the future, the thriving, successful libraries. I don't want to sound like a Cassandra, but over the last 15 years, I have, around the country and in my own library, worked on the theme that economics, frankly, will drive our libraries, especially our research libraries. And they're going to force us to be successful, to make organizational, structural, and cultural changes to maintain our roles as vital contributors to the teaching and learning in our institutions. I see the technology as an enabler. I don't see it as the driver of our efforts. My early work focused on the skyrocketing cost of library information. And in the early 90s, some of you will remember that the cost of information was growing at a rate of around 14% a year, which was obviously unsustainable. Campuses simply could not invest that kind of money in keeping us just even with the cost of purchasing the information that we already had. And so at that time, I focused on that and the expense of introducing new technologies which would presumably help us better serve the campus. And that in that economic environment, it was impossible to maintain our past collections, manage the libraries of the day, and build the library of the future. There simply was not enough money to do all of those things. From 2001 to 2004, I was fortunate enough to serve on a project, a national project funded called Project on the Future of Higher Education, which focused on university and college economics, not just library economics. And through that service, it became clear that libraries, colleges, and research universities, especially our public institutions, would soon face an economic crisis that would not only threaten how libraries do their business, but the traditional way of doing business in the entire academy. Today, one only needs to read almost any issue of the Chronicle of Higher Education to see that these predictions about the economics of higher education have now come true. My view of the changes needed to overcome the challenges that we face, the economic challenges, has evolved over time. And it's really been shaped by my experiences at the University of Arizona libraries. The University of Arizona is an exceptional institution that's in a state where we have faced budget cuts 14 out of the last 18 years. And but even though we've done this, our libraries are now on the verge of even greater integration into the campus learning and research programs than ever before. That's not to say we don't need more money, and if you want to send money, we'd be happy to name a room after you, or start a book endowment, or just talk to me after this program. We've lost 20% of our budget from 1997 to July of 2001, in a 2-year period of time. And we've lost 30 positions. So I want you to understand that we have truly faced sort of severe economic problems. But even having faced this, we're seen by our campus and our students as a strong, vital, contributing force to the university's excellence. But this is a result of sweeping changes we've made at the libraries, the hard work of our personnel, over a 20-year period of time. So we've made radical changes. We started in the early 90s, and I'll talk more about that, but we had a radical vision that we have had the luxury of implementing over a 20-year period of time. But we are moving forward with new programs. We understand that we're not alone, and many library leaders in the profession today are not letting our current crisis go to waste and are using the economic downturn to make fundamental changes in libraries, changes that have been needed for a long time, even if we weren't in kind of a dire economic crisis. The changes that we see necessary will result in our ability to maintain the vitality of the library and therefore allow us to move from talking about how do libraries survive, hold our breath, get through this problem, but yet thrive in service to the campus. My feeling is that after the current economic crisis abates, that no public university will entirely recoup the funds that were once available, nor will libraries. We're not going to go back to the good old days. And even at private universities, and I understand that you luckily are different here. You haven't faced the steep economic downturn and endowment losses that many have faced. But many privates, in a report issued by Moody's Investor Service last week, say that the financial outlook will remain challenged for at least 12 months, and probably into a longer period than that. So we're all facing a new reality in terms of the support of libraries. You know, as a preface to the rest of this presentation, it's important to stress that while I'm going to speak from the University of Arizona experience, that I'm doing that to illustrate what can be done. I hope to kind of pull you back to principles and not, I give you examples from us, but I think that there are bigger principles and of what can be done, and that's what I would like for you to focus on. We don't see ourselves as having the pathway to success, but we see that there are many pathways once you take a look at where you want to go and that you begin to look at the bigger picture. Many of the things we've done and are currently done are unique. You're going to see a lot of yourselves in the activities that we describe. We've been good at borrowing ideas from other people, and we're going to go home with the wow idea and some ideas from our conversation last night. Where I think we're a little different is in the length of time that we have faced the idea of a revolutionary vision of a new library, and the totality, the breadth and depth, the sort of tenacity of our efforts, and that's how we're different, that we've been at this maybe a longer period of time. You know, maybe necessity is the mother of invention, and 18 years with 14 years of budget cuts have made us very inventive. But hopefully that this will give you some ideas for your own library. At the University of Arizona, our basic approach has been to stay focused on customers and their changing needs. We all know how students are changing. They come in, they're now digital natives, many of them. They have experiences we don't. They're perfectly willing to read a book on a scrolling text, which I fall over if I have to read more than a page or page and a half on an email, let alone a scrolling text with illustrations and music blaring in my ears and so on. So our users, our customers have changed, and they have changing needs from us as a result. And we frankly have been focused on the creation of library as service rather than library as collection. And we think that this is actually a very key point that many libraries will have to turn to this philosophy. Our efforts, I'm going to talk about it, are broken down into 5 general categories. Some organizational and cultural changes we needed to make, our planning and budgeting systems, our new business practices, communication, and then our collection approaches, which underlie our ability, frankly, to make some of the changes we've made. And I'm going to start with the organizational structure. In the early 90s, we focused on our organization as the first thing that we had to do in order to enable us to change how our library operates. And we knew that to be successful, that we had to empower our librarians and staff by flattening our organization and pushing decisions down to the appropriate level. That we had to let go of traditional divisions of work, rather than maintaining rigid organizational hierarchies and bureaucratic rules. We developed a team-based structure, and our goal was to have everyone working at the top level of their job classification, knowledge, skills, and ability. That one of the things we needed to do within that in order to have that be achieved, we have moved to where staff, not librarians, manage our in-building services and facilities. And librarians are focused on integrating the library into the instructional and research programs through their work and relationships with faculty. We've moved to optimize our staffing resources by placing individuals on project and activities that are most important to the future, even at the expense of daily work. So there have been times when we took people off of daily work, daily functional work, and we put them on a project team to develop a new service or improve a service, knowing that we were perhaps degrading some services that day, that week, that month, that year. We also made it an underlying issue to ensure that our people had the technology and resources they needed to do their work, even if it means that there are fewer people. So that when we looked at making organizational changes, we frankly said, and many libraries have the philosophy that you hold on to your people. I know faculty departments do as well. Even in tough budget times, you hold on to people, you hold on to positions, you cut supplies, you cut travel, you cut equipment refreshment. And so everybody is less effective. And so we made a decision that even if we had to have fewer people, that we would support the people we had with the resources to do the job the best that they could do, to take advantage of their talents. We also had, as part of our thoughts about our organization, is that while we were doing all this, we had to encourage diversity and create a climate that welcomes different viewpoints. That this wasn't something that could wait until we reorganized, but it was something that had to be a part of our new organization as we thought about our organization. And then we realized that we had to have an organization that rewarded continual learning and continual improvement, that it wasn't enough to stand pat with what you had, but we had to continually be looking at how people grow and learn and adapt to the new environment, and how the organization looks at its services with a thought of continual improvement rather than standing pat. In 1993, when we began the task of inventing ourselves, we started because we needed the fundamental changes in our focus and services, and that we couldn't use the same old priorities and assumptions, especially those about funding. We realized we didn't have the resources to continue traditional collecting and processing activities, nor could we sustain the resource-intensive bureaucracy that characterized our organization. We decided we had to maximize the human and fiscal resources that we currently had, and that we had to become more nimble and flexible. To get buy-in, we appointed library-wide project teams. Ultimately, we had over 100 people involved over a 2-year period of time in organizational redesign. And at that time, we introduced principles of total quality management in order to focus on this continual improvement aspect of our work. In 1993, our redesign moved us from a traditional bureaucracy organizational structure that was focused on processing, managing, and storing things to a team-based organization focused on customers and providing value-added services. So it's not important the names and labels on here, but in 1993, we moved from an organization that had 16 departments and department heads and 4 assistant directors to one in 1993 that had 11 team leaders with 1 assistant director. We've changed our organizational structure 4 times since 1993. The most recent structure was implemented 2 years ago in 2008, and we've already tweaked that particular structure. It's not important the details of the reorganizations, and we've had 3 or 4 fairly major reorganizations. There is information in your handouts. But the 1993 reorganization removed overhead, as I said, from 4 assistant university librarians and 16 department heads to 11 team leaders and 1 assistant university librarian. This streamlining allowed us to lower overhead and reallocate administrative positions to frontline services. So this was the beginning of focusing on how we move people to the front line to improve services, and that we reduce the bureaucracy and the overhead that it takes to run the library. And we've continued to try to do that. Each time we reorganized, we used cross-functional teams, and they designed the new structure. These were not administrative people. Personnel were assigned to new teams based on their knowledge, skills, and ability. The daily work of all personnel changed. In our latest restructure, facility management and facility-based services, such as our information desks and the reference services provided there, were moved completely to classified staff teams. As classified staff have been trained to take on greater responsibilities, librarians' work has shifted to make the best use of their talents and expertise. They are focused on instruction, creating online credit-bearing courses, integrating the libraries into the learning program through the campus course management system, providing in-depth research support to faculty and students, managing collections, and creating and implementing new services to allow access to information not previously available. Our redesigns were done in order to adapt to changing customer needs and in anticipation of shrinking resources. Our goal was to improve services while reducing or holding costs steady, so that as we've introduced new technologies, we have really looked at how we reduce cost at the same time. Of course, the most important resource that any library has is its personnel. When library personnel share the same vision, are empowered to make decisions, have the resources to do their work, and are able to continually learn and grow professionally, that's an environment in which they can thrive and which the library thrives. Despite our frequent budget cuts, the university libraries have sustained a commitment to maintain funding for training, professional development, research, and the resources and equipment needed to perform the work expected. In addition, we've tried to maintain a commitment to maintain salaries at peer average for librarians and at midpoint of the classified staff classified ranges. This has meant eliminating work and positions where necessary, utilizing process improvement, outsourcing, reassigning work to appropriate levels, and other streamlining. We have fewer people, but we're trying to provide more support for them and reward them appropriately. All personnel are expected to work at the top of their classification or rank. They're rewarded for continual learning and applying that learning in the service of our customers. People are cross-trained so that essential work is always covered. Core competencies have been developed for positions, so staff and librarians will constantly know the skills they are expected to possess. All new librarians and staff are hired with the understanding that they may not be in the same position forever. If there's a greater need for their skills and knowledge elsewhere in the libraries, they could be moved. Staff who continue to learn and develop new skills will not be laid off in their when their present position is eliminated. So this is to keep talent in the libraries and to enable individuals to work creatively and do what's best for the customer rather than worrying about whether or not they're going to keep their job. Each year, we set aside dollars for professional development and training. Even in these budget cuts, we had close to $100,000 available, making, for faculty, a travel budget of somewhere around $1,000 a person. And for staff, and those staff that meet the travel requirements, they get about $850. We give 24 days of professional leave a year for professional development, going to conferences, institutes, workshops, working on scholarship. We also make available research grants for our library faculty of up to $2,000 a year. Diversity has been critical to the success of our libraries. Competencies for working in a diverse environment have been developed, and there are diversity criteria for recruiting for all positions. Nearly 29% of our librarians and 37% of our staff are from underrepresented groups. In addition, there are individuals from countries all over the world working with us, and we have people with differing sexual orientations, and we have a range of staff, although most of us are getting old, in different age groups. A diverse workforce helps us to improve our overall decision-making. Having different viewpoints based on life experience outside the dominant culture also helps to create services and programs for our increasingly diverse student body. More than 30% of our students at the University of Arizona are ethnic minorities, and they're primarily Hispanic. Minority student enrollment has climbed steadily over the past 25 years, and the university expects it to keep increasing, reflecting the growth and diversity of our state. So diversity is a customer-based business decision, not just a value that we hold. The second area I'll talk about today is planning and budgeting. Our objectives here have been to align our strategic goals with the university's strategic plan. Now, I know this makes sense to all of you, but frankly, in the past, many of our libraries, ours included, had strategic plans that were strategic for the library, that the library as an end in and of itself would have its own strategic plan, regardless of where that fit into what the university was doing. And a real shift in our thinking has had to be that we must understand the university's strategic plan and move library activities and plans to enable and help the university achieve its strategic goal. So the library, most libraries have ceased to become an end in and of themselves in the last 10 or so years, and have become more focused on our role in helping the university achieve its goals. Another objective of ours has been to anticipate and influence change rather than being incapacitated or worse, suffering wrenching change based on budget cuts or other sudden disruptions that we've not been able to anticipate. So we feel like we've got to constantly be doing environmental scans, that we have to look at what's going on around us, and that we have to begin to think about how changes in what the university's doing, what's happening in technology, what's happening with Google, that we have to look at all of these things and that we have to anticipate where we need to be and where we need to go, rather than wait to be a victim of some change that we can't influence at that point in time. We do this by looking 3 to 5 years down the road, rather than focusing all of our resources on today's services and collections. So I mentioned this earlier. We plan for how will we be better in 3 to 5 years, and we apply our resources to that goal first, and then we try to manage the rest of our resources for what we can do with our current day-to-day activities. We try to make data-based decisions based on ongoing assessments, surveys, customer feedback, usage and cost statistics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We maybe go a little overboard. We collect something like 200 data points a month. But we really do try to look at our activities and have data in order to inform the decisions that we need to make. Now, we also made up our minds that we were going to budget to our plan rather than plan to our budget, which means that we look at where we need to go and we put our resources there rather than saying, how much money do we have, and then we'll make a strategic plan to see how we can best use it. So we first figure out where we need to go. We take the money that we have to try to get us there, even if it takes resources away, again, from what we're currently doing, in order to be looking at that 3 to 5 year moving target. We've reallocated resources based on our highest priorities. We have staff-driven planning and budgeting. We involve personnel from across our library teams and job categories. We try to take advantage of new opportunities, such as collaborations. Wish we had an Ohio Link collaboration, but we have Gwilla, and we have, I'll talk about later, a new collaboration with 20 major universities in the western part of the United States to begin a print repository. And we try to use technology to minimize the impact of our shrinking resources. We try to diversify and create new revenue resources to lessen our dependence on state funding, and we'll talk more about that. And we try to stimulate innovation and creativity among library personnel by providing funds to try new things. Continually improving and developing needed new services is our highest priority. Our approach and philosophy around planning and budgeting is to say, what does it take to be successful in 3 to 5 years? We're not focused on today because we're never going to have enough resources to be entirely successful today. What we have to do is say that we're going to be better in the future. And how do we get there? And you don't get there by focusing all your resources on today's services and activities. One of our strategies, even in this budget cut time, is to make money available for new opportunities. Regardless of our budget situation, we set aside $500,000 each year. That's a little less than 2% of our annual expenditures. And I know for many companies, they talk about 5% at a minimum to make a difference. But we set this aside to fund strategic projects. This year, the funds enabled us to process and catalog new items donated to our special collections, digitize materials for our institutional repository, provide training and buy software to develop new instructional materials, hire a graphic designer and graduate students to design our new online class, buy electronic resources, support our trail, archive, and imaging project, which is digitizing government technical reports in collaboration with 12 libraries of the Greater Western Library Alliance. In addition to setting aside dollars for strategic projects, we actively seek ways, as I said, to diversify our revenue sources. We have invested, like other libraries, in staffing for fundraising and grant writing. We have partnered with the student union to create a cafe in the libraries from which we receive 50% of the profits. They're very unhappy about that, by the way. They kept telling me that they wouldn't make any money. And we're not making a whole lot of money, but $50,000 a year is my half, so I figure we're doing okay. We're building our capacity for generating revenues by selling reproductions from our collections and licensing the rights to use some of our materials in our special collections and Center for Creative Photography. We are also, our Center for Creative Photography is developing an active loan and traveling exhibition program which generates revenue and provides exposure to our collections at the same time. We have an Express Document Center, which offers a full range of printing, copying, and scanning services. We're now scanning materials for other units across the campus. And we also are in the poster-making business, especially for students that are doing poster presentations and who need big posters to illustrate their talks. And some of them are in capstone classes, which require them to make presentations. And we are providing those services to help them do that. But our most successful revenue generation is the student library fee. Students have started paying this in 2006. They voted themselves a charge of $30 a year, which generated last year $950,000. This spring, the students supported, with the Board of Regents, an increase of this fee from $30 to $120 a year. So we should be receiving about $3.5 million in fee revenue. We went from 1998 with 91% of our budget coming from state allocation to 2008, 75% of our budget, and by the end of next year, we'll probably be under 70% of our total budget coming from the campus state allocation. The process for getting a student fee approved is obviously political, time-consuming, and you know, they're smart folks, and they ask lots of really good questions, and they pay more attention sometimes than the campus administration to how I spend my budget. But in working with them and developing trust, and in developing the focus on the 3 to 5 year and the improvement, and reporting back to them the accountability, the students see the library not only as this kind of ideal service that they should have, but they see it as a service that's making an impact on their lives and that is responsive to them. And that comes from, I think, the organizational changes, the budget and planning changes, and the way that we work with the students. We've used student fee money to purchase a lot of new electronic resources, which they said that they wanted, and we report on the use of those. We've used it to upgrade equipment and hardware and software. We've used it to start a video streaming service, and we'll talk more about this later. But essentially, we now stream video through the course management system into the classroom, and we make video available 24 hours a day for students who have had a class where they've used a lot of audiovisual materials. So they can look at it at any time. They don't have to come into the library if they miss class or if they need to review and wait in line for one copy and a machine and try to get a look at the video. This is, in fact, also had an unanticipated consequence, quite frankly. We were trying just to make things easier for faculty and students. But we've made it so easy that faculty are now using more video in the classroom than they have ever used. So more faculty are using video, and the faculty that use video are using more of the video. And we think they're doing that because they think it enhances the class, and now that it's easy, that we've had an impact then on improving the instruction program. We provide laptops. Nowadays you'd think every student has a laptop. Well, we discover many of them do, but they don't want to carry it around. So they come into the library and check out a laptop to do their work in the library, even though we have something like 700 workstations for students. We have funded digital projects. We provide document delivery. One of the interesting things, 3 or 4 years ago when we started the student fee, one of the things when students said they wanted more electronic, they also said, you know, here's the graduate student prayer. God, please let the library have this available online. But if they don't have it available online, please don't let them own it in print. Because if we don't have it online, we have worked with our resource sharing services that we can get articles in less than 24 hours delivered to the desktop. So most students thought, you know, why should I have to go in if they own it in print and get it myself and copy it if I can get it through interlibrary loan to my desktop? And so we now go out into the stacks for print articles and book chapters, and we digitize those and send them to the desktop. We also are paging from the stacks books for our students, paid for with a student fee, so that when they come in, they can actually come in and go to the reserve area and pick up, 24 hours a day, books that they have asked to be paged from the stacks. You know, one of the things we also found is they don't know how to find stuff in the stacks. And so this saved them a lot of frustration and saved us time going to search for stuff after they turned it in that they couldn't find it. So it was a great service for everyone. So we've used student money to improve services for students, and that had a benefit of also improving things for faculty. Essential to good budgeting is also the ability to reallocate resources to a higher priority or new work. Our process is designed to use cost and usage data to identify work that can be eliminated, streamlined or outsourced at a lower cost, or assigned to a staff in a lower pay range. And we'll talk about this a little later. To maximize collection resources, we've used leverage buying, which you all use through OhioLink. Last year, we actually saved from list price $1.6 million on materials that we bought. And in addition, we avoided $6.5 million in expenditures through consortial purchases. That means that we received, for example, 10 years ago, we were buying 400 of the 1,600 Elsevier journals for about $600,000. And today, for about $1 million, we're getting all 1,600 Elsevier journals. So we've avoided the cost of those extra journals. In terms of resource sharing, we've worked with RAPID, which is a system designed by Colorado State University, and we help to improve their system by improving extensive data and analysis to improve the accuracy of their database and enable their members to fulfill more ILL requests. And we've been kind of a thorn in the side of the Greater Western Library Alliance to encourage members to rethink their requirements for turnaround delivery times. So in the Greater Western Library Alliance, where we borrow most of our books, we set a standard of 3 days turnaround time for for books or other physical items that we borrow. So these are services that we think are important for our faculty, especially when you focus on library as service. For new business practices, our objectives here have been to focus on continual learning and constant improvement. We've done this incrementally rather than waiting for outside economic drivers. We've applied new technologies at a faster rate to improve service and reduce costs, not just increase capacity. We evaluate current services and collections, planning the abandonment of those that will not be needed in 3 to 5 years. Now, this is critical. In libraries, we've had a tendency that as long as anybody used a service, that we kept it going because we couldn't disadvantage a single person. We've set up, by looking out 3 to 5 years, looking at declining usage, and there is a point now where we will plan to abandon a service even if a few people are still using it. Basically because we have to use those resources to maximize our service to as many people as possible. We've improved our decision-making by involving people regardless of their job classification or faculty rank in the decision-making process. So this is not, our decisions are not just administrative decisions. Our goal has been to focus on increasing flexibility and responsiveness. Another goal is to look at our services and how do we make our customers more self-sufficient in their research. We really look at how do we make this possible for people to do things on their own rather than looking at mediating all of our services. So we want to disintermediate our services. We design services with scalability in mind. And by scalability, I mean the ability to ramp up the services and serve more people without needing more staff. So as we look at services, we don't say, and if we're really successful, we're going to need 5 more librarians. But we look at designing the service about how can we be more successful and reach more people with no more staff. One of our tenets has been to look at doing locally only that which must be done locally. For example, collecting unique items for our special collections. We try to give up doing what's already being done elsewhere, including in other libraries, even if we have to give up some control. And finally, we don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. When it comes to service, you know, it's not a choice of perfect or imperfect. It's a choice between some and none. And we have to change our way of thinking about this. We've decided that something is better than nothing at all. And of course, once we get a good service into production, we work to improve it to make it great. But we don't strive for perfection before we order a service or before we do other work. When we embarked on our reengineering adventure, the decision was made to identify new management tools and sound business practices. We began by using total quality management. We used process improvement. We identified 3 services at the very beginning which were unsatisfactory to our customers. Our reshelving time. Now, you probably haven't had this problem, but when I went to Arizona, from the 3rd week on, we had trucks all over the library. We had books stacked up on tables, and it took weeks to get books reshelved. We did a process improvement study, and we reduced our pickup time and reshelving time to 12 hours. So books that came in, books that were used out in the collections, we turned them around and got them back on the shelves within 12 hours. We reduced reserve processing time, which, so for some of you, you may have experienced this, but in libraries, we told the customer, the faculty member, you get us your reserve reading list by 6 weeks before school starts, we'll have it on the shelves for you. Well, 2% did that. Then about another 35 or 40% got them in by 2 weeks before school started. Then another 10% got them in, actually. But then we still had about 40% of the faculty didn't deliver their stuff till after classes started. And as a result, we were taking 3 to 6 weeks to get all this stuff on the shelves. So we did a process improvement study, and we moved from the first of the semester, this great delay, to recognizing when faculty were going to bring these in, and we now get stuff on the shelf within 48 hours. Now that was when we were doing reserves. We've eliminated reserves in the library. So we can talk more about that. We studied processes in our technical services, from acquisitions to cataloging processing. We reduced early on our book order time from 40 hours to 8. By using Blackwell's shelf-ready services and streamlining our other processes, we were able to move 11 librarians from positions in technical services to frontline services, and we eliminated many staff positions. By studying our processes there, we went from 46 FTE in technical services to 14. And the stuff's getting out faster. In 2004, we began to analyze the kinds of questions we were receiving at our service desks and the skills needed to answer those questions. After tracking every question over 3 two-week periods, our analysis concluded that students and trained generalists could answer more than 95% of the questions asked at each service site. So we trained classified staff members to take the place of librarians on the desk. When staff gets questions that they can't answer, they refer the customers to librarians for in-depth help. By redeploying librarians from service desks to other work, we were able to reduce our cost while maintaining service quality and increasing our ability to add new services because our librarians were now free to pursue those. Without a doubt, the use of technology has enabled service improvements and expansion in our libraries. Technology is not cheap. We've had to find ways to introduce new technologies while reducing other costs. Customer self-sufficiency is one key to this. For example, more than 80% of our circulation is now going through self-checkout machines, which we affectionately labeled express checkout, and saw a real increase in service. So self-checkout wasn't a real come-on for our customers. Many of our interlibrary loan requests are now unmediated, reducing the staff it takes to mediate interlibrary loan requests. And moving to digital collections has reduced space devoted to print runs and time spent reshelving. Ultimately, some jobs have been changed or replaced by technology. In 20 years, we have only laid off 3 people, and we had to do that last year with the big budget cuts. We couldn't adjust any longer. But people are not laid off when we change their job or we change the technology. We, to manage our technology and be sure that we're using it effectively, we've created a Technology Architecture Council led by our Assistant Dean for Technology Strategy. This group is responsible for standardizing the technology architecture we use, making it consistent throughout the libraries, and formulating our technology policies. For example, a recent policy we developed is our buy, borrow, or build, which says that we will license an off-the-shelf software solution whenever possible, rather than customizing or building from scratch. We measure our performance against quality standards. Examples of these standards are up on the screen. To manage our resources more effectively, I said we track more than 210 data points. This information has helped us make better decisions. Usage data, including time of service, allows us to schedule staff to work, increasing our effectiveness and productivity. For example, because we're open 24 hours, we have the overnight staff process our interlibrary loans so that we virtually can process interlibrary loan requests 24 hours a day. Library-wide projects have a priority over other projects and functional work. If necessary to achieve our strategic work, team projects are put on hold. Recently, we initiated the use of project management techniques based on the training by Ernie Nielsen of Brigham Young. Since we use so many project teams, we wanted to be ensure that staff member time was optimized. Becoming more efficient and effective in creating new services not only helps us improve more quickly, but has freed up resources for other services and work. To date, we've trained over 100 personnel in project management. In addition, we've created a project to create roadmaps for every one of our services. The roadmap, which is managed by our librarians, provide a detailed 3 to 5 year plan for the development of our products and services. So how do we improve a service over a 3 to 5 year period of time? A fairly controversial practice is planned abandonment, identifying services for elimination before their demand is abated. We make this decision based on use. As I said, we have phased out book reserves and a separate electronic reserve system. We still digitize journal article, book chapters, and audio selections and video for online courses, but now we encourage faculty to add these to the course management system. In addition, we have phased out individual face-to-face instruction for classes. The 50-minute library instruction session is being eliminated in favor of creating more scalable ways to provide user education. Obviously, communication is key. Good communication inside and outside the library is important. We meet regularly with administrators and students. We meet regularly with faculty. When we're considering changes in the library, we don't just announce a change. We early on announce the problem, the context, and we engage the campus in a decision of a variety of outcomes before we decide on the path that we're going to take. We use multiple channels to reach people. We use Facebook, which I couldn't tell you how good we are at it. E-newsletters to faculty, campus email, website. We recently introduced monitors, security monitors in the building, big 50-inch plasma screens, which were funded by campus security because students didn't, after Virginia Tech, students didn't sign up for the cell phone alerts. So we now have alerts in the library, on plasma screens, but the screens are just sitting there when there's not an emergency. And so we begin to use those to advertise library events, to educate people about what's going on in the library. I think we might be able to even wow some people with things on those screens. Hadn't thought about that. We produce reports on our quality standards, so we do a variety of things. Now I'm going to turn this over to Cheryl. Oh, before I turn it over to Cheryl, I have to talk about collections. To thrive, we must be able to reallocate resources. In the past, our resources are expended on selecting, buying, processing, and managing print collections. Today, we're managing information, not collections. Our objectives are to move to primarily digital collections and remove print copies from the stacks to create more customer space and reduce the cost of collection maintenance. Our goals also are to constantly push the library to our customers so that they can have anytime, anyplace access to needed information resources, regardless of who owns them or where they're located. Our goal is to put desktop discovery and desktop delivery of information at the top of our priorities, to rely on collaborations with other libraries, and to support regional and national efforts to share develop and share print repositories. Our focus on print collections is economically unsustainable. Libraries must shift their spending to new services and infrastructure to ensure long-term success. I've described the reallocation of processing staff through process improvement and outsourcing. We also are saving money due to declining purchases overall and a switch from print purchasing to purchasing materials in a digital format. 91% of our current serials and 34% of our new monographic purchases are digital. A conscious decision has been made to make the digital format the format of choice for purchases, except for special collections and the Center for Creative Photography. We stopped buying print and digital in 1999. In 2005, we became the first federal digital repository. We've begun removing print version from the collections that duplicated our electronic holdings. We're not maintaining off-site storage for our materials, although some have been sent to the Center for Research Libraries. We're depending on cooperatives such as regional shared print repositories and online repositories such as LOCKSS and Portico to keep the electronic stuff safe. Having less print material requires less storage and management. We must admit that the electronic book collections are mostly not yet ready for prime time with their usage difficulties and restrictions on simultaneous users. But libraries can't afford to buy everything, so we do need to move print to growth areas such as ebooks. In addition to digital content, we've reduced staffing going into the selection and purchase of materials. Our materials are now going to be acquired on a patron-driven initiative acquisitions program to decide what's added to the permanent collections. This included most of our electronic ebooks. Many of them we're subscribing to, but we're buying those that are then used. In addition, we're going to experiment this fall with moving to patron-driven acquisitions for print as well. We're going to be adding electronic records for available materials that are available in print to our online catalog. Then users who want to use a particular item will, in effect, order that item, and we will have it printed on demand and shipped either to the library or to the user, which then will come back to the library and be processed. We're working on making our collections more discoverable, and we've got projects going to make materials on campus in unofficial libraries. We have a poetry center with 36,000 volumes of poetry, which we cataloged this year to make their resources available. We don't have as big a partnership with the public library as you do, but we pay for a bookmobile to come out once a month so that our faculty and students can get materials from the public library. In our special collections, we're focusing on adding to those and growing in space. Our digital collections are not as well developed as yours, but we're focusing right now on a kind of library as publisher model. We've got 6 or so electronic journals. We have electronic book. We've digitized a number of other materials. And we have something called Lesson Link, which is a K-12 umbrella searching engine for all of the materials on campus developed by our faculty that could be used in K-12 instruction. Now I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl to talk to you about library as service and why we've done all we've done and what library as service means.
So we frequently hear the phrase library as place in library discussions. In LibQual surveys, library as place is one of the core categories of questions. If you Google library as place, you get 18,400 hits. But today I'd like to focus on library as service, which, by the way, if you Google that, you get 1,810 hits. Throughout all the changes that we've made at the University of Arizona, the concept of library as service has guided us. Library as service focuses on the customer. It results in everywhere you are access, pushing the library into the research and learning environment, at the desktop, in the lab, and in the classroom. Library as Service penetrates deeply into the activities and programs of the campus, becoming an essential partner in achieving campus strategic goals. Library as Service tries to anticipate needs before there are demands. It empowers and enables customers to be effective information users and creators. Library as Service collaborates with other entities such as Archive, Cornell's ePrint repository for physics, math, and computer science, regardless of whether there are those who don't pay their share or whether the campus is unlikely to see quick results. Library as Service shares the philosophy that information is a public good that libraries must protect. Library as Service is not an end in and of itself. Library as Service positions the library as a major player on campus, not just a support service. It requires the library to be closely aligned with the goals of the university and to constantly adapt and adjust to further those goals. Library as Service is also a commitment to ensuring that the core services, those that impact the most people the most often, are operating at maximum quality level. And that's why our library, after restructuring, focused on improving shelving and reserves and interlibrary loan services. Those improvements built campus confidence in the libraries and gave us room to make other changes. Learning from that experience, we've made it a practice to try to improve some aspect of our performance when we move to change or eliminate another service. Library service has permeated our concept of space as well. It transforms the physical library into learning and research space focused on users and their needs rather than storage of large print collections. This building is a great example of user-focused design that capitalizes on compact movable shelving to leave a lot of space for users. We use some compact shelving, but we've also, like Carla said, removed a lot of our print collections in order to put space for users back in our library. In 2002, we opened a 33,000 square foot information commons in the lower level of our library, the main library. It's designed to be a full service center for students, not a computer lab. It has a centralized information desk and 254 networked computers loaded with software, 180 laptops available for checkout, 24 group study rooms, 2 presentation practice rooms, and an electronic classroom. To facilitate group activities, we have plenty of extra seating available, and we're in the process of taking out some of the study carrels and installing hexagon-shaped tables where students can gather around a single computer and work on a project together. Our instruction program is taking on new dimensions as well. Our organizational structure reflects this new emphasis with the creation of the instructional services team. This team has already been involved in the development of several new products and services. Recently developed libraries widget, which you can see there on the screen, enables students to access reference services through the university's learning management system. We use D2L, Desire to Learn. The widget's embedded into course pages and gives students easy access to the library's website and catalog, online resources, the student's library account, and our Ask a Librarian service. And we found that since we added the Ask a Librarian service to the D2L and as well as to every single page of our website, that the use of Ask a Librarian has more than doubled. We also have a new library resource organizer. It's an online tool that helps facilitate the creation of course-specific resource materials and automatically links them to D2L. It guides faculty through a step-by-step process and helps them customize resources for their students. In addition, we've also taken our traditional support for the English composition class and morphed the content into a one-credit online course that's under consideration for becoming a requirement in the university's general education program. So this is the final slide. What's the take-home message from all of this? I think it's that we must create library as service, and that doing so is an ongoing, never-ending process. It's very hard work. There's no magic bullet. There's no shortcut. There's no easy way out. Even though we've made many changes at the University of Arizona, our work isn't over by a long shot. There's no way to say, okay, we're done now. We have to keep refining and keep improving. We have to stay nimble and flexible and always user-focused. The new reality facing libraries is that change is rapid and constant and unavoidable. So it's up to us to do whatever's necessary to thrive and to keep doing it over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla and Cheryl. That was a very thought-provoking presentation. We have a few minutes for questions here from the audience. Since this presentation is being video recorded, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and our friend Gina Midlick here will come to you with the microphone. So please use the microphone to ask your question so we capture all of this information.
What services besides the reserve room do you abandon?
You want to use this one?
Oh, good question. I'm going to have to think back over the years. I mean, there are things that we've done. For example, years ago, when we first moved to the online catalog, we had the innovative interfaces system that was just menu driven. And, you know, so people could use a 286, and it was probably some of us in here that remember a 286, and a modem to get in. And we decided at one point that we needed to move away from a menu-driven to advanced searching, which meant people couldn't use a 286 and they couldn't use a modem. And so we did that, and we had, you know, a little pushback, mostly from a few faculty, and only one faculty member continued to be fairly vocal about it. So I called his department head and offered to go halvesies on a new computer for him, and we resolved the problem. You know, we've removed print. I mean, one of the things that we abandoned is Elsevier was requiring at the end of the 90s that you had to buy both the print and the electronic material. And so we were the first library to say, no, we're not going to do that. Because they were charging us extra. And so they said, well, all right, we'll let you do it, but you have to buy directly from us. And so you can't go through a jobber. So we said, okay, as long as you give us the same service as our current jobber, we'll be happy to go through you. And they said, well, I think it's okay for you to get the electronic from your jobber. So, and we've been removing print from the shelves since 2002. So that's actually removing it. We started, in 1996, we wrote a white paper that said within 10 years we would be removing as much print from the shelves as we were adding, except in special collections. And we started removing print from the shelves in about 2002, 2003, the JSTOR stuff. So we started removing print, and we've removed about 250,000 titles from the shelves, freeing up space for adding other services. so that, you know, we moved to, of course, what other people did, electronic reserves, and eliminated, told folks that they either used electronic reserves or after a year, or they'd have to find their own way to do this. And frankly, we had a few faculty members, I don't know how they get away with it with their students, who for 10 years have had a box out in front of their office every semester with their reserve readings in there. The kids come and pick them out and go photocopy them. But for the most part, you know, the students, these things were done with more than a year's notice. And the students, in fact, pushing for many of these things. And so we have done those kinds of things. Outsourcing a lot of our Blackwell's shelf-ready books. We were the first library to negotiate with Blackwell's to do shelf-ready books. Academic library. Public library's been doing it for 50 years, but so we did that as well. So those are some of the kinds of things that we've eliminated over time.
When you say you've gotten rid of, are you talking about journals only, or?
Nope. We have removed journals that were duplicated online. We've removed all the Elsevier, all the JSTOR, some of the Springer and Wiley. In addition, we went through the stacks. We bought compact shelving and introduced it to help us expand our space. And then the campus did us a wonderful favor. They installed sprinklers on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor of the library. But it turns out when they installed sprinklers that you couldn't have anything within 18 inches of the sprinkler head. And that was the top shelf on all 3 floors. So the fire marshal was a little irritated. And so we went through and removed all duplicate print copies of books that were on the shelf. And then we also removed a little bit of what was unique to materials to us, but we did it in a way that we checked to make sure that it was represented in a lot of other collections across the country. We've removed now most of our government documents. As I said, we went to be an electronic depository. We were the first experimental library to do that. So we're receiving all of our government documents electronically, and we have systematically weeded the shelves as materials became available electronically, back files became available.
Did you get much faculty negative feedback on the books? Because we have, the humanities faculty here, and particularly history, are very insistent that they need the books here, they need to browse. You know, their research style is different than.
No, I understand. Well, again, we removed mostly duplicate copies from the shelves. And we did have some pushback, but, and there were a few faculty and department heads unhappy. So I called their dean, and he arranged for me to come to a department head meeting. And I went out to the stacks, and I took pictures in the stacks because we couldn't use the top shelf. And there were books, you know, on the floor that we couldn't shelve, books on book carts. And I took big poster-sized pictures and went over and talked about our budget, talked about our options. What I mean, talk about context. You don't talk about just the decision, but you have to have the whole context and what are the options that we had. And we don't have a repository offsite, and we talked about the cost of trying to do something like that, and the faculty weren't going to be any happier with that than they would be with interlibrary loan. That's why we spent a lot of money improving interlibrary loan. So one of the things we talked about is we've pushed, and we can get most books to you now through Federal Express in 3 days. And so the results of being able to do that have really mollified most faculty. We did have a big fuss over the British parliamentary papers with the history department insisting, oh, you know the British parliamentary papers, yeah. It took up a huge amount of space, and they were duplicated electronically, and the department just absolutely insisted that they were heavily used. Well, they'd been stored in the basement of special collections while we were doing some remodeling for over 2 years, so we kind of knew how little they were used. And they'd only been on the shelves for about 6 months, and we went down and checked the shelves, and it was, I mean, you needed gloves and a mask to protect yourself from breathing in all this dirt that was all over them. So they kept fussing, and so we talked to the law library that had just added some more space, and they said, yeah, we'll take them. And I said, in 3 years, you just quietly get rid of them. And so we accommodated in doing that. I mean, we do feel that we know there are different faculty uses. We truly are focused on trying to do our best for all the faculty to have access to what they need. But there, within those constraints, then we may have to do it in an alternative manner. And now that I think we've developed some credibility with interlibrary loan being fast, certainly for most of them faster than sending a graduate student out to look for it, and which we found graduate students constantly going back to the faculty members saying, that library's just so disorganized, can't find a thing over there, it must be missing, I don't know what we're going to do. So we're more effective than the graduate students, and it gives the faculty member more time with their graduate students to do something else if we can effectively deliver for them, and they love the paging service and so on. So yes, I mean, that's, first of all, we try not to surprise anybody. We try to have long lead times. That doesn't mean that there still won't be oppositions. We try to talk about context and what our options are. And then we also try to introduce an alternative, which we hope will be an improvement in service at the same time that we're having to change how we have done things in the past. But yes, there's legitimate pushback. There's no doubt about that. And you just have to be prepared for that. And you have to listen. But I think that other libraries are now finding that they have to use some of these techniques. For years, I kept joking with my colleagues that they wouldn't do anything till I tried it, and they waited about 6 months to a year to see if I got fired. And then if I didn't get fired, they began to think about doing it.
Can you tell us some of the techniques that you're using to incorporate student perspectives and perceptions and hopes and dreams into your program and resource allocation planning?
We do a lot of work with students. I meet with the undergraduate student leadership and the graduate student leadership 3 to 4 times a year, giving them updates on everything that we're doing, giving them updates on our overall budget and on the how we're using their money. We have an undergraduate student library committee. We have a graduate student library committee that meets 3 to 4 times a year, and those are separate groups. I speak to the student Senate. I go to the Graduate Student Association, both of those at least twice a year, to talk to students and to ask them for feedback and how we're doing. I try, we'd been working with students a long time before we asked for the student fee. We try to go on the philosophy that we can't wait till we need them to do something for us, to get engaged with them. And so we try to develop long-term relationships and to get their feedback and to find out, in addition, what are theirs. We had one student who ran for the Student Senate based upon a campaign of students were tired of having to go to all these different places to find the resources that they needed for their specific course. And so that's when, we began working with this student and the student senate then to say we shouldn't have a separate library reserve systems, that it really did need to be integrated into the courses, which didn't mean that we were unwilling to do the work, but it did mean we've got a philosophy now that we have to be where they are, that we have to supply resources where they are, where they work, before they know they need us and try to come find us. And that's also a philosophy that 93% of our collection is now discoverable if you do a Google search. I'm not going to fight Google. We might as well be where they are, where they work, and introduce them to what we can do to help them. So we work on that kind of basis. We also do LibQual. We do it every year, and we use the results to guide us. We collect questions or concerns about services at all of our desks. I think we have something like 2,000 from last year of things people want or concerns they expressed at our desks, which we will analyze and put into categories. We do student focus groups on specific topics. So we use a variety of techniques. We also have a survey that we do that has gap analysis, which lists a variety, a continuum of services, asking students what's most important to them and how well they think we do it, which often that list comes out different than we think it would come out. And that helps us.
I'd like to ask you about the interlibrary loan. I was interested in your use of it with the faculty and getting it to them by Federal Express, etc. So my question is, do you have a charge for the interlibrary loan for the individual faculty or
No.
students?
No, we don't charge for any of that. We do it for free. And we recently introduced WorldCat Local, which which means that when you search, you have an option of searching just our catalog or the WorldCat database as well as our catalog. And search results come back with our holdings first. They also come back with some searches now of databases, so you can find articles and you find ours first, and then you find the holdings of other libraries. And we've had about a 50% increase in interlibrary loan on the basis of that, which tells us, because our job is discoverability, it tells us that there are things out there that people need that they didn't even know existed. And now that they have access to that they're using it. We get a few who order a bunch of stuff and then don't come pick it up. We don't know the extent of that problem yet. We're analyzing that. And we want to do it over, we don't want to do it over a month. We want to do it over probably a year to see what the problem is. And if that turns out to be a major problem, that we have people who just order a bunch of stuff and then never come to get it, then we'll look at other ways to deal with that problem. But we don't intend to charge for access to information to the campus.
Thank you very much for coming this morning. Let's give Carla and Cheryl one more